So on that fateful day when I decided that I would like to go back to work, because ultimately I didn't want to be the patient anymore, I was struggling with my identity, I decided to approach my practice 3 months after I finished treatment with my intentions of potentially returning to work. I listed off all the physical symptoms I've already mentioned, as well as the nerve pains that I had post chemotherapy, as well as the mental health issues that I was suffering with, the anxiety, the claustrophobia, and at that point the PTSD that I hadn't quite realised I was suffering with. I went and had a meeting with my practice and I told them all my concerns. In fact, I felt quite professional as I sat there through the tears, telling them about how I was worried about returning to work, how I was worried how this may have changed my practice due to a different perspective, the fact that I didn't know if I could sit through a consultation without needing to go to the toilet, and the fact that I was so fatigued I didn't know if I could last a day. And we had a very open conversation. It was very supportive, and we decided we'd take it at a steady pace, where I'd initially do paperwork and non-patient facing work to get myself back and my brain back into the zone. And with time, I started to see a few patients, which became more and more. One of the things that I do look back in hindsight is that I probably returned to work too soon. And I really, really, really can't emphasize enough to take your time making that decision going back to work. Everyone's situation is different. Your personal circumstances, your social setup, the type of job you're doing, the treatment you've had, your expectations. And actually, if you go back to work too prematurely, it might set you up for a fall. And for me, it resulted in burnout and really did impact my mental health. I'd like to go through a few of the tips that I've learned or I've read about returning to work after an illness, whether that be a mental health illness, whether that be a physical illness, it doesn't matter. But my number one tip for you is about communication and having open communication channels with your employer and with those around you that are working with you if you can. Decide how you're going to disseminate that information when you return to work. Do you want just a blanket email, or do you just want to return quietly? How are you going to decide the hours that you come back and do? Are you going to have amended duties? And have a vague return to work plan with your employer, with the caveat of this: recovery is never, ever, ever linear. It's never a straight line. As time passes, you get better and you manage to do more with your job. It was very much for me a cycle of this, with bad weeks and bad days and good days and bad weeks. And actually, the more I started doing within my job in terms of taking on more duties or doing more hours, the more fatigued I felt and the more it affected my ability at times to work. So there were times where I was increasing my duties and hours, but actually that was at the impact to my own self and my own mental health. You also want to be open with your employers about any ailments you might have, any adjustments that might need to be made. So for example, with my sciatica, I asked for a standing and sitting desk, which helped no end. I tried to work from home some mornings to give my back a rest. And also having that time for appointments that was still every week at that point was so important. The other thing that I would say is that if you ever have any problems with work, there are so many agencies that you can turn to in terms of getting help. Hopefully it won't come to needing legal help, but there's an excellent charity called Working with Cancer. If you're a cancer survivor or a thriver, you may turn to, but just know that there's always help there. And within your contract, this may need to be reviewed as well. So the stipulations of what you can and can't do. If you find you are struggling at work, do not hesitate to tell people. It's okay if you've been fine for a few weeks and then suddenly you're not. But again, people may not realise this. For me, when I returned, I looked well on the outside and people often didn't appreciate what was going on in the inside. One of the things that I often get asked is, how do you positively live and work after cancer? And I have to say that I have really tried, and I actually wrote down a list of all the positives that cancer gave me. So there's obviously a long list of negatives, and no one would ever want a life-altering illness, but there are a number of positives that it's brought me in terms of post-traumatic growth. You know, I've got a different perspective. There's the spiritual growth that people talk about. There's new opportunities, new challenges that come your way. And certainly that's something that I've decided, using my doctor patient platform, to use within the media, on TV, on radio, within my book, and within social media platforms, and the blog that I published on my social media account at Doctors Get Cancer Too. These are all things that actually have opened up a whole wealth of not only challenges, but new opportunities as well. And that has allowed me to thrive, grow and heal. And I can't emphasize positively enough that it's really important that we try and find the positives in what life throws at us. There's the saying, isn't it, make lemonade out of lemons? And actually, I'm not saying that every day I've been this figure of positivity. There are days where I cry, there are weeks where I cry on end. But on the surface of it and on the outside now, I try and take this experience and move forward. I try and make sure that I cherish the people that have been around me and helped me day to day, from day dot of diagnosis, from before and now moving forwards. Practicing gratitude, journaling, writing, that really helps us live positively after illness. And trying to sort of compartmentalize the illness. I've had therapy, I've talked about it, I feel I've processed it, but actually now I feel I can pop it back in a box, I can compartmentalize it. And although I am reminded of it daily through side effects and symptoms that I still have post-treatment, I'm able to put it away in a box safely. And it tends to come out when I have surveillance scans or during scan times where the anxiety goes again. I plan things for the future, fun things, making memory things, so that actually I know that I'm living my life to the best I can. And I celebrate every win, big or small, it doesn't matter. Celebrate every birthday, celebrate. Life is for celebrating. And I think, you know, even when you've had a bad day at work, you know that actually you might have made a small difference to Mr. Blogs, and that really makes a huge difference in a day. I try and focus on the things that I can control rather than focusing on the things that I can't, and fueling that endless cycle of worry. And exercise is absolutely one of the number one things in me, keep moving forwards and keeping living positively, as well as therapy. And you know, I had never experienced mental health issues pre-diagnosis. I'd never gone through therapy. And actually what was really interesting is to go through that process that our patients do and fully understand actually the challenges about having therapy, and the fact that actually one therapy doesn't fit all. I'll end there. It was brilliant to be able to share some of my experience with you. And as I say, I've written a lot in my book that's coming out on the 16th of January 2022 about recovery after cancer, life after cancer, and how we can move forward positively together with the challenges that I faced. I think that returning to work, as I say, is a monumental milestone. And if you're thinking about returning to work or have returned to work after illness, I just want to say a huge congratulations. It's not easy, but you've done it. So well done. And as I say, there's always help out there if you need it with going back to work. And I hope that I've given you evidence that you can thrive and you can succeed back at work after a life-altering illness.
I am doing this video for Mylocum, who's an organisation that I absolutely love. Today I want to discuss autism. Autism is a lifelong developmental condition that affects over 700,000 people in the UK. And autism can affect people in many different ways, from social, communication, sensory issues, and many others.